you rather Alexander Skarsgård or Bill Skarsgård? If your answer is anything other than both, you're biphobic. No matter the options, the answer is always both because it's Bi Visibility Day! Clearly, this is the Scum's Wish video. I've talked about wanting to cover this anime for Bi Visibility Day for several years because, in my opinion, despite it being dramatic as high-key ridiculous and extremely salacious, to me it is the most thorough representation of the bi experience at the forefront of a story's plot in all of anime. And come on, dramatic, ridiculous, salacious, stop talking about us like we're not here. I'm gonna kick things off by discussing and analyzing the specific characters that represent the bi and LGBT experience, pivot into covering a swath of other characters who both are and reflect many other rainbow alphabet letters, tail end it with my broader thoughts on Scum's Wish as a whole, and along the way expose the story's aggressive secret agenda. If you've never seen Scum's Wish or never even heard of it, I will summarize in a second, even though I highly recommend that it is something you experience firsthand. Spoilers ahead for the entirety of the anime, which is basically a 1-1 to the manga. We'll cover some of the little things that were cut out towards the end. They're inconsequential, mostly. As well as the epilogue volume Scum's Wish Decor. Now make a wish. Scum's Wish is a story about friends with benefits which include mental health services, grief counseling, and hands-on physical therapy, with no copay. Hanabi Yasoroka has grown up with her subliminal father figure who she calls Oni-chan, real name Narubi Kanai, for whom she hath held intense feelings of ski-des since her childhood. During her second year of high school, Kanai becomes her teacher, further distancing the two of them since she can no longer call him Oni-chan. To make matters worse, Hanabi has picked up on Kanai's attraction to another teacher, Akane Minagawa, with Hanabi learning her hot classmate Mugi Owaya has similar feelings of unrequited ski-des for Akane-chan sensei. So the two go full emo and depression bond over the bodies they won't be catching anytime soon. But when seasonal affective disorder takes an entire hold of their decision-making and hormones, they have the epiphany of utilizing roleplay to simulate their Rika Tarada fantasies in the most consensual scenario you can call out someone else's name in bed. But this relationship is het. I said this anime was bi, right? Well, Hanabi also has a friend named E-chan, which is short for Ebato-chan, and surprisingly not Echi-chan, although. So after agreeing to RP canoodle with Moogie Boogie, Hanabi one day invites E-chan over for a sleepover. However, what Hanabi doesn't know is that E-chan is Yuri Uenoyama, and when it comes to Hanabi,
I've got a big lesbian crush on you.
At their sleepover, E-chan's gay panic takes over and she makes a move on Hanabi, revealing she knows Hanabi is only using Moogie Woogie for his and just like that, Hanabi has found herself a second concubine in a different flavor. Hanabi henceforth sets out on a path of erotic indecision involving both her man and woman, where she navigates the relatable bi struggle of being unable to make a choice between boys and girls, finds herself at intense odds with her not brother's potential lover, who has a whole lot going on herself, and ultimately wallows through more emotions, more conflictions, and lots of Now, there is literally nowhere else to start talking about Scum's Wish intersection with bisexuality other than with the focal character of the story herself.
Let me tell you a story about a boy and a girl.
I will say before proceeding that at no point in this story does Hanabi herself say that she's bi or any of the other elemental people identities, or even say that she's straight. However, when we talk about fiction, and especially regard to a sexual identity whose behaviors overlap with many other sexual identities, I want to preface that everything I'm saying is coming from a place of associating behaviors and attractions within identity. And again, when it comes to fiction, how we can see these identities manifested even if they're not outright said to be. All the things she didn't say to remix Tattoo. There are many bisexual anime characters with storied histories of their attractions to people of different genders that we're familiar with from over the decades. Arguably the most common in regards to our interests, being the male characters in BL anime who oftentimes have a history of dating women, and their stories being about dating a man for the first time, or even more than the first time. But what makes Scum's Wish so notable is that from my memory, it is one of the few examples where someone not only interested in different genders, but around with them. Again, outside of hentai. Shout out Bible Black. Again, at this point I really should do a full Bible Black video.
Episode 1, the first note I make, Minase is hot, because he is. He has nice I have said before, I'm going on a tangent, this is irrelevant to the video.
Only other major example I can think of is Akihiko Kaji from Given, but he never gave as much as Hanabi. Hanabi as a character represents the explorative nature of the bisexual experience, almost too thoroughly. It's a personal attack, frankly. The experimentative stage many of us personally require in order to fully understand our own bisexuality, the willingness to be open and trying new things with people of various genders, the process of being faced with the monosexual status quo of thinking you have to choose a gender, in her case the turmoil over it, and the raging hormones of realizing that sometimes all the feels feel good! Also just the being desired by people of different genders and being open to all of it. What's funny about Hanabi's relationships in Scum's Wish is that by the end, spoilers, she doesn't end up with either of these which if this was BL would invalidate it from being BL to some people. But it also just hammers home the bi vibe of it all, where frankly, outside of like MMF and FFM poly situations, most of us do make a choice, even though your choice does not define your entire sexuality. However, the fact Hanabi makes none is a very tangible representation of a lack of a monosexual decision, a very blunt lack of a choice. Which is nice to see, even if not necessary for a bi reading of her character, or for any character. Especially because after her first night with Aechan, she touches on her shame at the experience not being related to girling all the way, but the fact that she's using her friend. Sanae could have been Sano. And it all would have played out the same with her feelings being the same. One could argue that numerically, Hanabi has shown attraction to more men, but as we know, a bi person's gender preference percentage differs from person to person. But I would like to highlight that the only that Hanabi has is lesbian so which I highlight mostly because if we gender swap the entire cast outside of Hanabi, if Sanae was Sano, if Kanai was Kanade, if Mugi was Megan, I feel like regardless of exact context, the story would have played out a lot closer to towing the line of liking girls as a phase, and erring on the side of placing importance on heterosexual or even that being with a man is inevitable, inescapable. Choosing to have the only person Hanabi has sex with be a woman, to me, evens out the voiced attraction that she's had to the two men she's had affection for or intimacy with. Because she manages to go furthest with the gender with the least amount of love interests, but also states that the is the sexual contact she enjoys the most out of the three people she around with. Granted, two of them were proxy situations, but the verdict still stands because the two of them were proxy for a man. Side note, can you imagine the discourse not around Akane, but Akashi? Sensei, I'm on my knees! Now let's get into Hanabi's love interests. And because I just love saying so much, we'll start with
You like what I'm doing? Drop that kitty down low.
from Tim Drake to Stephanie Brown. Backed by popular demand. For a reason. Because honestly, as I rewatched Scum's Wish while I was working on the Citrus video, I realized that Scum's Wish is my favorite Yuri, and it's written by a woman. Shout out to this commentator who gets it. And you may think that's a joke, but it's not. Scum's Wish knows it's Yuri. Otherwise, why would Echan's Door to Darkness be surrounded by lilies? If you didn't know, Yuri is Japanese for lily, the same way Bara is Japanese for rose. More on that one later. Echan as a character, is hot, but I feel a need to clarify that I will be speaking about her in regards to two tenses of her character, which present both her proximity to as well as her distance from bisexuality. The first I'll discuss, which has proximity to bisexuality, is Echan within the context of the anime in regards to its ending, and the second is the Echan in the context of what is revealed in her epilogue in Dekoru. Echan in the anime is a character who presents herself, explains herself, and by way of her actions is a girl who is solely into girls. There are reasonings for this outside of just her sexuality being her sexuality, but through and through, Echan is the character who shows same-gender attraction the most within the story. While we will discuss bisexuality specifically in a second, this generally makes her the prime example of the same-gender attracted experience in the broadest sense. Like I said, her gay panic over the sleepover with Hanabi, she's basically if Uenoyama was a woman and a top. She has a crush on, kisses, and out another woman throughout the story. Relatable behavior to me and my fellow Elemento people. And to top it off, a core aspect of her character is her refusal to let herself be seen for who she is and most specifically who she loves. While in part a closeted character even within her situationship with Hanabi, her lituationship, she refuses to fully express herself in her feelings, often inner monologuing about keeping these feelings to herself, refusing to let these feelings be out and open. I would also add, if we're getting into more niche queer experiences, Echan's relationship with Hanabi is also high-key like closeted affairs. I mean, Mugi and Hanabi's lituation is not committed. If we use math, they're technically not even together. However, they do have a situation. Eventually, they both reveal they stepped out with someone else, and from what we see, Mugi never finds out Hanabi fiddled and diddled with Echan, keeping the gender dynamic of the lituation under wraps. So while Echan is predominantly monosexually attracted to Hanabi in the story, the introduction of her cousin, male cousin Atsuya, adds a little bisexual bow on top of everything. First is Atsuya in conversation giving the gender is a construct, gender doesn't matter speech to Echan. She's attracted to Hanabi for Hanabi. In theory, if Hanabi was Hanako, she'd still be down bad. But by the end of the story, after Echan and Hanabi have ended, she decides to give Atsuya and his a try, portraying Echan as a rarer case of a queer monosexual who then decides later to try the opposite gender. However, this is all within the context of singularly the Scum's Wish anime and the main Scum's Wish manga. The Echan of the core story of Scum's Wish is a lesbian who then leans closer to bi towards the end. But in Scum's Wish Decor, it's shown no, Echan is in fact just a lesbian. Not to make her anime ending a phase. It's revealed she actually did try to like Atsuya, she lives with him in college, but she is just not into him or men at all for that matter. I'll continue to touch on Decor as we go, but all I'll say for now is that certain aspects of it are giving full-service guidebook. What do you mean Oki and Okan aren't blood related? I want my her back. But thankfully, Achan's story is one of the highlights. As for Atsuya, yeah, unrequited still. Someone find him a bottom. Oh, speaking of.
Said I don't like begging, but I'm on my knees.
Alright, it, wigs off. So yes, outside of Hanabi and Achan, and a bunch of other characters in decor, which we'll touch on later, the rest of the relationships and the attractions in Scum's Wish are het. But what if I told you these relationships and the fabric of the story itself was bi? Outside of it also being Yuri. As we bisexuals know, bisexuality is comprised of heterosexual attraction to different genders, and homosexual attraction to the same gender. So if on the surface most of the relationships of Scum's Wish are het, then there would need to be a homo component to match the het beyond the Yuri of it all. What if I told you that the heterosexual relationships of Scum's Wish were secretly yaoi-danmei? If you don't know what yaoi-danmei is, stop what you're doing. Posture check. Go watch my video on the topic later. TLDR, everything is yaoi-danmei, and so is every het relationship in Scum's Wish. We've already touched on Mugi and his relationship with Hanabi, but there are actually 3 other relationships that Mugi participates in within the course of the story. Hayakawa-senpai, Mocha no Latte, and Akane-chan sensei. So basically, Mugi is bi because he's the bicycle of Scum's Wish. Just did it! Hayakawa-senpai is Mugi's former upperclassman and buddy from before the story began, who he continues to have a casual relationship during the course of the story. She's actually his match to Hanabi being with Achan. Hayakawa in her initial appearance is described as having a boyish look while being a girl. It's shown that within their relationship she is the more dominant partner, the one directing the course of the relationship with Mugi following her lead. So if Mugi is a boy, Hayakawa is boyish, and Hayakawa the boyish is the, let's say, chop in this relationship, then this is not literally BL. Blonde-blonde pairing is a choice, but it's het BL. It's gonna be outside the norm. What's also notable about Mugi, not only within the context of this relationship, but about him in most of his most intimate scenarios, is that he's highly sensitive, easily stimulated, and moans like a whore. That's right, Mugi is a hyper-rare character archetype, often implied but rarely shown, known as the straight uke. Outside the of explicit BL, there are rarely ever instances of sexually expressive men in hetero relationships in anime, whether ecchi or full-on hentai. Usually during the deed, they're talking like they're barely doing anything, or it sounds like they're doing an easy workout even if it's their first time. Stop doing push-ups and push it in. So Mugi, squealing like a fat juicy pig waiting for a roast. Novel behavior. Straight uke, everyone. And Mugi's straight uke-ness is important to understand within the context of his relationship with Mocha and why it doesn't work out. Mocha is Mugi's childhood friend who had a crush on him ever since they were fetuses. Eventually, Mugi, while on break from Hanabi, entertains Mocha's affections and decides to take her on a date, then takes her home. However, he encounters a major hurdle while in the initial stages of them hooking up that he finds himself incapable of surmounting, since it is something that he frankly cannot do. And what hurdle is that? Well, 2 bottoms don't make a top. Now, Mugi has no problems performing when it comes to this next and final love interest. The uke moans are back, baby! But before we tap into that, I just want to say that this next individual is unstoppable, infinitely supreme, the actual greatest of all time, and has the most appropriate Tinashe song out of our fellow bisexuals' entire discography for her title card.
I've been a nasty girl, nasty. I've been a nasty, nasty, nasty.
I did not want to use Nasty Girl, because I can't stand that song, but it's so appropriate. Now, Akane Minagawa, the actual greatest of all time, at what? Absolutely, is a mythological creature known as the perfect match to its fellow endangered species, the straight uke, called the Lady Seme. The yaoi-danmei lore knows no bounds! A Lady Seme, you guessed it, did you really? Is a woman in anime who is the dominant figure in her relationships with men. Now, I would argue that Lady Seme are actually much more prevalent than the straight uke. The hets have all the fun. However, what's unique about Lady Seme is that they are not always paired with a straight uke. But when they get together, magical things happen. It's like ABO! So yes, Akane and Mugi's pairing is of the alpha omega het variety of Lady Seme and straight uke. Although I would not consider Hayakawa to be a Lady Seme, she's just a Seme. What makes Akane's Lady Seme status distinct is in her distinct femininity in her relationships, where not only is she a woman, she's girly. Hayakawa is a woman, but boyish, and also way less dominant. As for Akane's dominance, well, I haven't even told you about that relationship yet, have I? I'm too caught up in the lore! Mugi and Akane's relationship, similar to Hanabi and Oni-chan, began long before the series begins, where Mugi was initially tutored by Akane before she became his teacher. Later, she becomes his teacher. Later, he confesses to her after he and Hanabi promise to both do so to their age gap unrequited, so Mugi and Hanabi can start dating for real, and when he does so, she claims to reciprocate. And they Now, what's fascinating about Mugi and Akane's relationship, despite being the opposite result of what happens when Hanabi confesses to Kanai, is that while it's revealed over the course of the story that Akane plays up her girly charms as an act in order to trap the attention of men because she's bored, this side of her, and not the naive girly form that she usually presents as, is what Mugi's into, because he has taste! Because he's a straight uke looking for a lady seme, and he found one, he tripped, and she fell right on him when the parents weren't home.
It was an accident.
What, like he tripped and you fell?
But you'll be surprised that Akane was not always a lady seme. In fact, she starts out the story just as a lady. In her pursuit of men, she may play elaborate games to get that but she has always been the one directly pursued, not the one doing the pursuing. That's not lady seme behavior, that's just women. Just kidding! No, Akane actually evolves into a lady seme accidentally during her pursuit of Hanabi's Oni-chan. I won't do it that time. Kanai and Akane met during the two's orientation when they became teachers at Hanabi and Mugi's school, with the former falling for the latter almost immediately. The latter, however, initially was not interested. He's not her type. I think like the rough translation for the Japanese word is herbivore. However, after noticing Hanabi's affection for Kanai, Akane adds that f***er to her list and begins courting the man to purposely annoy Hanabi. However, in time, Akane realizes that something is amiss. This courtship is not courtshipping how they usually do, because she realizes she is the one wearing the pants, the one pursuing, the bigger dick. And at this point, she has the realization that not only has the pursued become the pursuer, but she is pursuing a rare breed of straight uke who are into holding. He's literally that go and be a meme. That's right, with a yaoi danme lens. Akane's story is BL about an uke coming to terms with the fact that they're a seme, a lady seme. Their yaoi relationship dynamic is further proven objectively by the undebatable evidence of Scum's wish occurring in one of the parallel timelines of none other than Neon Genesis Evangelion. Get in the robot and buckle the up. Akane is a mastermind, ethereal being, and beloved angel who is shown to have constant proximity to a piano, like Kaoru. And Kanai is a dweeb with no spine who blushes a lot, like Shinji. Shinji can't top in no timeline. His end is the end of Evangelion, if you know what I mean. I'm talking about his ass. And if you've seen Scum's Wish, you've seen Kanai's end of Evangelion. So that's enough proof that he's teacher AU Shinji to me. And I didn't intend to spoil Rebuild of Evangelion in this video. But you have 3 seconds to skip ahead. All I'm saying, 1003, 1002, 1001, abort, y'all. Shinji ends up with Mari Makinami Illustrious Seme. With a seme of any gender in any timeline. He may look different in Scum's Wish, completely different, almost like he's a different character. But if anything is consistently true about Shinji Akari, he's an uke in every timeline. Only thing I'll add about Akane is that at the very end of Scum's Wish, right when you thought it couldn't get any gayer, Akane is seen poking Hanabi of all people with a rose. Hanabi and Akane are the same gender. Akane is poking Hanabi. She's doing so with a rose. If the lilies of Echan's Door to Darkness taught us anything, what's a rose in Japanese again? You guessed it. Bara. This is Yuri Bara! Yuri, Yaoi, and Bara. Scum's Wish has it all.
Just saving for us somewhere.
Now that's all the in-depth topics, characters, and agendas. Should I keep this on? So now I'm just gonna highlight things in relation to both the main story as well as decor in relation to the rainbow of it all. So decor, first and foremost, is basically just one big f***ing pride parade of a manga. Like I said, Echan's strict lesbian identity is reestablished with the best age gap twist, but she's not the only character from the story to be shown to be a member of the Scarlet acronym. And no, I'm sorry, it's not Mugi. Even though with himself admitting that his problems are women, maybe he needs a man! He has the moans for it. They're a minor character in the grand scheme of the story, but Decor does have a chapter about how Mito, one of the two girls curious about Hanabi's relationship with Mugi throughout the story, is actually asexual, which is crazy. She even says it herself. And it's not crazy because asexuality is crazy. It's crazy that there's asexual representation in this hot dog of a story. In Mocha's chapter, the first story of Decor, she has a run-in with a person who presents and at the time identifies as a boy at a mixer, but in conversation with him learns that he likes boys and wearing cute clothes like Mocha. Again, no alternate pronouns are given, nor is any identity or gender label, but I would make the call to say that this is likely a gay otoko noko, especially because Lolita fashion is involved. Alright, that's enough tangible queer representation. Y'all are here for the yaoi danme of it all. Back to Mocha. Obviously, she doesn't get with Mugi in the end of the anime or in the Decor manga, yet she shares a visible lesbian yaoi dynamic with Hanabi. They should have done the right thing and forgotten about the man between them. Black and blonde hair, add their personalities, and they're basically acid-free citrus. Moriyama is one of two background boys throughout the story. Background boyfriends, male students A and B are the A and BL plot, but he confesses to Hanabi in the end. Bye boy behavior. Last I'll mention is the of all who perpetually
Smell like Medusa.
Akane's ex-boyfriend, Hanabi's attempted revenge, and walking around Takuya Terauchi. Takuya mirrors Akane not only in gender, but also in the fact that he starts out as just a straight man who later becomes a straight uke. He starts out as just Akane's buddy and a tool for Hanabi to use to make Akane jealous, but after disappearing for most of the story, he returns towards the end to be the catalyst to not only directly expose Akane's ways to Kanai, but also indirectly reveal Kanai's inclinations for soft cuckoldry. However, the most surprising thing about his return is that he has become a straight uke to a lady seme, exhibiting the common trope in many BL of a man becoming but a for a seme. He even runs away like an uke. The S and the U in the scum of Scum's Wish clearly stands for straight uke. And you take away the S and it spells com.
God knows I can't fix you, but I can quit you.
We are so blessed. Scum's Wish came out in 2017. If it came out nowadays, the strawman fictional discourse with goalposts on the go would be on a world tour. My only real negative feeling towards it is that it's yet another example of straight stories getting all the fun fiction. We can't even get a proper BL Omegaverse anime adaptation, and I say that as someone who doesn't even like Omegaverse. Outside of sexual identity, I find the portrayal of sexuality, influence on attraction, and characterization of Scum's Wish to be thrilling. Part of me does wish it was full-on hentai. I don't feel like it needed to be. It has a sensuality that, in my opinion, is a lot more potent than a lot of explicit that I've seen in both softcore and hardcore sexual depictions in anime. But a hentai status giving elevation to that existing sensuality is ideologically arousing. Now, I love the Scum's Wish anime wholly, cumulatively, unconditionally. As I mentioned, it is mostly 1-1 to the manga. The early chapters has some stuff that was not adapted, but that in my opinion is no biggie. Although I am high-key annoyed at the omission of both Mugi going another round with Akane after he wakes up with her that one time, as well as him off in the bathroom at school. I think these were narratively necessary. So besides that, I find everything done in the Scum's Wish anime to be something that I both adore and favor. I mostly love decor. I find most of the epilogues exciting, except for one. Namely, again, spoilers, you have like 2 seconds. I'm not giving a counter this time. Mugi and Hanabi reconnecting. It's not even that I don't like them as a couple, but everything about it disagrees with my digestive system. It's shown years in the future that Mugi is down on his luck with life and he has, quote, a woman problem, where he's basically just sleeping around with no career path or whatever, entirely because he's hung up on his feelings for Hanabi. Now, the anime is an adaptation. I have not read the entirety of the Scum's Wish manga, page for page, word for word. I just skipped it to see comparisons and to see differences and frankly to see if the bodies and the was any more or less explicit. It's more explicit in the anime, actually. Maybe if I read it, I would see that there was a stronger vibe that Mugi actually liked Hanabi and she actually liked him. You know, for actually themselves and not for the people that they were proxy around about. Me personally, I didn't see that shit in the anime. So to see him hung up on her all these years later, I just don't care for it. Hanabi inversely is living her life when they eventually reconnect. She's even friends with Mocha. Why isn't she loca for Mocha? I think if there was a lengthy, like more than a single volume epilogue, and maybe even a sequel series following the two of them reconnecting and entering into an actual relationship, I could be here for it. Because I actually do like a reconnection to relationship trope. It's why Tsunadokei is one of my favorites. But much like what a Tsunadokei in English is used for, it needs time. In this existing execution, I'm not a fan. I actually love that the two didn't get together and seemingly cut off all contact. That's kind of hot in its own way. Unrelated, but hilarious and coincidental, that earlier this year I rewatched all of part 1 of Naruto, and then I decided to rewatch this, where Hanabi and Mugi sing the 5th opening song at karaoke. I literally would not have picked up on this literally if it was any other year.
You and I make so much stuff. Why got me all fucked up?
Scum's Wish is a 10 out of 10. It's so iconic. It clearly inspired one of Passion Flix's most recent films.
We used each other to remember Steven and Jamie.
I could see how disappointed you were that I wasn't her. Because I'm guessing you could see how disappointed I was that you weren't him.
Overall, the perfect anime to be made visible on the day of bisexuality. It's peak yaoi danme, and if you're looking for more yaoi danme, the next category for my Patreon and channel members exclusive series Shipping Wars is sports anime ships. Head head to my Patreon or click join in order to see who was nominated and see who will win the war tomorrow, as well as find out which BL ship came out on top in the last installment. In the comments below, share your thoughts on Scum's Wish. If you're bi, make yourself visible, damn it. Also, did I even shout out Tim Drake in this video? That's where this is from. One of my favorite comic book bisexuals. Bye! I've been a nasty girl, nasty. That was gonna be stuck in my head all day. You're all welcome. Is somebody gonna match my freak?